what are some of the top mistakes you see other retirees make?
Well, I would say the first one is having not thought about it.
And when you say they miss their opportunities, what kind of opportunities are you referring to?
So I had the opportunity to sell my company, and a lot of people, I think, hang on to their company if they're, say, CEO or it's their own company. Trying to hang on to your identity is a mistake. What I do is I help people discover a new identity. So when people are retiring, one of the biggest questions I ask is, you're retiring from something, but what are you retiring to?
When you talk about issues, would you say that some of the top issues are loneliness, or is it health, or is it boredom? What are some of the top issues?
Yeah. Boredom. Other issues are fear of letting go of their identity. Health is not one that I can really change, but I can certainly encourage. And part of my program is talking about health and keeping yourself healthy. Social relationships is really important, and of course, money.
Do you find that part-time work or volunteering plays a big role?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Volunteering, teaching, mentoring, all are really important because we feel we want to pass on our wisdom. So whatever career we're in, there's usually a place afterwards to do that.
What are some of the biggest myths you think that us working folks have about retirement?
I think the biggest myth would be that they're going to be happy playing golf, traveling, and sleeping in. Well, there's a group that I'm part of now called Business Authority. We're a group that offers advice and connections and knowledge and wisdom to entrepreneurs over 50. The elder people, I think, have wisdom. A lot of younger people have knowledge. But knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
Right. Yeah, actually, that's
Right.
really good. That's a good analogy. This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is retirement expert Larry Jacobson. Larry retired in his mid-40s, sold his company, and then sailed around the world, and he now coaches people on how to do retirement. We always think about the money and the financial aspect of retirement, but Larry takes it one step further, and he actually tries to figure out what you should do in retirement to stay busy, stay active, and stay healthy. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Gabe. Nice to be here.
Larry, on this show, we always talk about retirement because I think everyone should have financial success. They should retire when they want to retire. They should quit the corporate world when they want to quit. Nobody should be a slave to money or finances. You are one of those fortunate individuals. You were able to do it, and you're able to do it much younger than most. And we always tend to focus on the finances. Oh, how much money will I need? How much will I take out of my 401ks, my 59.5? How much will Social Security be? And we tend to focus on the numbers, but there's a much bigger aspect to this. And the question is, what will you actually do in all that free time?
That's right.
Larry, take us through your journey. You were in your mid-40s. You sold your company. You were a CEO, and you said, I'm done with the corporate world.
Yeah, thanks. I had been in the business world for 20 years, ended up as a CEO, sold the company, and just saw my chance to make my lifelong dream come true. And ever since I was 13 years old, when I first stepped foot in a sailboat and taught myself to sail, I said, I'm going to sail around the world. And of course, family and friends are like, yeah, sure you are. And I kept that dream alive for over 30 years. And when I sold the company, saw an opportunity, and I got just enough money to think that I could afford to do this. And I would have to say, I wish I had done a little bit better planning. Wish I had known you and your podcast then. Because halfway through my sailing trip, I kind of ran out of money, and then ended up selling my half of the house to my partner. And so that kept me going for the rest of the trip. And when I got home, I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't have a plan. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it home. There's 1,000 ways to die out there. So yeah, I came home and I wrote my book, The Boy Behind the Gate, which is won 6 literary awards, and including the best memoir from a Bay Area author. Anyway, that was really great. And then I went on the speaking circuit, and that was great. I did 2 TED Talks. And then I was a matter of, well, now what are you really going to do that's going to give you some purpose and some fulfillment? I had reached almost to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where I felt very good about myself and what I had done for my own achievements. But the next level, the top level of self-actualization, it comes from when you pass on your wisdom, when you mentor or teach or help others. So I like to say that I help other people untie their dock lines so they can go make their dreams come true. Well, the way I got into coaching, real briefly, was a friend of mine who was a CEO of a company in San Francisco called me one day and he said, "Hey, Larry, can you come over and give me some advice on some things?" And sure. And it was a big company in San Francisco. And I went in and we sat down and I said, "Okay, so what do you need help with? Or, finance, what?" And he goes, "No." He says, "I'm the CEO. I know how to run the company." He says, "What I want to know is how you did it." "How I did what?" "How you got out. I don't know anything else. I don't know what to do. And so I'm staying." And so I thought, well, okay. I gave him a few tips and pointers. Then about a week later, a friend of his called me. Same thing, same exact thing. How do I get out? So I thought, well, maybe I'm onto something here. And that's when I took a year and I created my online video program called Sail into Retirement. And that's where it takes you from, I have no idea what I'm going to do, all the way through to, oh, look, now I have a plan. And I will say that at least with a plan, you've got something to change. So it's important to have a plan, and even for money as well. When I came back, I was running out of money rapidly, and so it was pressure to do more speeches and to make the book more profitable and that. But it turned out it all worked out. Here I am.
You sold your yeah, and Larry, you sold your company over 20 years ago. So you've had 20 years to think about this and talk to people who are in the same situation in life, and you've had 20 years at this retirement game. Maybe walk us through what are some of the top mistakes you see other retirees make?
Well, I would say the first one is having not thought about it, having not thought about retirement, and you like in your 40s. I mean, when I was talking about retiring, people were looking at me funny, like, "Why are you're thinking about that now?" You're like, I think I was 46 when I left to go sailing, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about that now because here's the opportunity. I could sell the company, get just enough money to at least to get going, and when opportunity knocks, I learned that you've got to answer the door. A lot of people have opportunities and they miss them. Yeah, it was.
And when you say they miss their opportunities, what kind of opportunities are you referring to?
So I had the opportunity to sell my company, and a lot of people, I think, hang on to their company if they're, say, CEO or it's their own company. They hang on because that's what they know, and that's what their identity is, and they're afraid to leave that identity behind. And yeah, I was too. I mean, I left my career, my income, my security, my home, my identity. I left all that behind because I was willing to stretch out of my comfort zone, and that's because I was so passionate about wanting to sail around the world. That was something I had dreamed about since I was 13. And so I really wanted to do that. But I would say that trying to hang on to your identity is a mistake. Also, a lot of people are fearful, not only of losing their identity, but I'm going to lose my income, my home or something or whatever. Gee, you're going to go from CEO to sailing bum. That's kind of a big ask. CEO to tending your roses every day. It's not so easy for people. And so what I do is I help people discover a new identity. When I hear somebody say, if I say, "Tell me about yourself," invariably people will talk about their career because
Mm.
what we identify with. If someone's retired, usually they'll say, "Well, I'm a retired dentist," or whatever. And so then I'll stop and say, "Wait a minute. Number one, I didn't ask what you did for a living, but now that you've brought it up, what do you mean you're a retired dentist? What are you doing now?" So when people are retiring, one of the biggest questions I ask is, you're retiring from something, but what are you retiring to? And even for people who are young in their 40s and early 50s, are not ready to retire, but think about, well, what is it you want to do next? What did you want to be when you were a kid? and a fireman, or I always wanted to be a veterinarian, but never happened.
Right.
So,
So when you start
yeah.
working with somebody, Larry, and you start asking those questions to get to know them better and try to understand what makes them tick, how long does it take you typically before you feel that you understand the person well enough to give them good advice?
Well, that might be kind of an unfair question because I've done it enough now that I think I've seen most situations. And so I can pretty quickly assess what someone's issues are, what their issues are. Now, what the answer is for them to do, that takes on average 4 sessions, 4 coaching
Hmm.
sessions. And sometimes it's done in one coaching session. I have a thing on my website that says, sign up here for a free introduction, for a half an hour. And oftentimes at the end of the half an hour, I know what they need and what they can do, what they should be doing. And sometimes I'll tell them and I'll shoot myself in the foot. I'm just going to lose a new client because here's what you should do. But as a coach, you don't say what you should do. As a coach, you try to draw out what someone wants to do and feels that they should do on their own, and they have to come up with it.
Would you say that when you talk about issues, would you say that some of the top issues are loneliness, or is it health, or is it boredom? What are some of the top issues?
Yeah, yeah. Boredom. What happens after one retires is the first couple of weeks is woohoo! I can sleep in, I can travel, I can play golf, and do whatever I want. And after a couple of weeks or a month of that, you started feeling seems like I should be doing something with more purpose. And I have all these skills and all this wisdom and knowledge, and what can I do with this? So that's certainly something. Other issues are fear of letting go of their identity. Health is not one that I can really change, but I can certainly encourage. And part of my program is talking about health and keeping yourself healthy. Social relationships is really important because we don't really necessarily recognize when we're in our careers how much of our social connections rely on our workplace. And then when someone retires and they go, oh, well, okay, gee, I was going to go to dinner with the gang Thursday night, but I'm not part of the gang anymore. So what do? Well, you have to find a new gang. You've got to find new friends and new relationships. And of course, money. Most of the clients that come to me in general, that's not an issue. They've planned well enough. They've had a financial advisor. And if they don't have one, I say get one. And they have their money situation kind of figured out. The question is, what do I do? What do I do when I wake up? And what do I do that gives me purpose and fulfillment and makes me feel like I'm part of something larger than myself, which is what I felt when I was in my company. So I have one client who is a high-powered attorney in Washington, D.C. And not only was his name on the letterhead and on the door, it was on the building. So when he retired, and then he would call into the office and he'd say, okay, do you need me for anything today? And they would answer, no, we're fine. And he would cry. I mean, he was just so depressed. So we had to find new things for him to do. And I'm glad to say that was a big success.
Do you find that part-time work or volunteering plays a big role?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Volunteering, teaching, mentoring, all are really important because we feel we want to pass on our wisdom. So whatever career we're in, there's usually a place afterwards to do that.
How you're sailing around the world, I'm fascinated by the idea. Were you alone the whole time?
No, it was a
Okay.
big boat. It was 50-foot sailboat, and yeah, I went with. Well, when I left here, there were 5 people on board, and then that we got down to Mexico, that dwindled down. I mean, to Tahiti, that dwindled down to 3, then 2, then 1 for a little while, and then 2 again. As a friend of mine came back, and then for the most part, the 2 of us completed the circumnavigation ourselves, and it took 6 years, the whole thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
If you had to sum it up, and I know this is not easy, but what's the biggest lesson you took away from that 6-year trip?
Yeah, when I came back, I felt that I was in a foreign place. And it wasn't because anything here changed, but it was what changed inside of me. And, when I was an executive, I was driving a fast car and flying first class and, all this. And what I realized on the trip was it had nothing to do with being happy. What happiness was just something inside. And the happiest people that I met all the way around the world were in the poorest countries, the poorest places, and they had the least, and they were just happy. They were content. And, our society makes us quite, it's not incontent, that's incontinent. No, it makes us, exactly. Anyway, it makes us wanting, always wanting for something else. And I realized that that's not what makes you happy. I went all the way around the world looking for something, and I get back and I realized it was inside of me. And this sounds like a cliche, but the most important thing to me in my life now is the friends that I love and the family that I've created, and that's what really counts to me.
Yeah, it makes sense. And
Yeah.
now that you've seen both sides, right? Like you've been in the corporate world and you were hustling all day, and now you've been in the retirement world for a while. What are some of the biggest myths you think that us working folks have about retirement?
Whew. That I think the biggest myth would be that they're going to be happy playing golf, traveling, and sleeping in. Because I have had multiple clients say to me, there's only so much golf I can do. And then when people travel too, they travel and then they come back. And then some people are travel bugs. They want to keep going, but it gets tiring and people want just some stability in their life. I would say that they're going to be able to be satisfied without finding something with purpose, because it's not satisfying unless you've got purpose. And, look at what you do. You bring all this great information out to the world and you feel good about what you do. That is really, really important. You can do that until your last breath.
And you know what? And that's an advice you can give to one of your clients. They can start a podcast, and
Yeah,
I'll vouch for that. A podcast is a great way to connect with people, to learn more about the world. And yeah, absolutely.
well, there's a group that I'm part of now called Business Authority. It's new. It'll be launching, let's see, probably next year. And it's a soft launch now, but we're a group that offers advice and connections and knowledge and wisdom to entrepreneurs over 50. Because most of the new businesses being started today are from people over 50 years old. And even if they're small businesses or big ones. Yep. And I know you hear about all the young people who are starting businesses, and that's great, wonderful. But it's the elder groups, I call them elderpreneurs, who are starting most of the businesses. So I like to help them.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I haven't heard that statistics before. And it is a little bit surprising because you're right. Most of the stories we hear are about young people becoming very successful, especially here in Silicon Valley, where we both live.
Right.
But I know that through a lot of the guests that we've had on the show is that there is a big movement of people leaving their full-time job or their corporate job in their late 40s, early 50s, and then they get into franchising or they start their own business. And they keep working 40, 50 hours a week, but they work for themselves rather than for someone else.
Well, the definition of an entrepreneur is someone who will work 100 hours for themselves in order to not work 40 hours for someone else. Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth in that.
There
Absolutely.
is a lot of truth in that, and it's satisfying. And if you're doing something that's, that's helping people and passing on your wisdom, um, I think this would be a good point for me to point out the difference between knowledge and wisdom, because it's, the elder people, I think, have wisdom. A lot of younger people have knowledge, but knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
Right. Yeah. Actually,
Right.
that's really good. That's a good analogy.
But that's what I can come up with.
No, and that's actually a really good one. Me, like engineering was my first diploma. And I can tell you that when I graduated from engineering school, I had a ton of knowledge. But man, when I got my first job and I started working in a factory and okay, now go design this and go design that, I didn't know what I was doing. Proper design is all experience based. You need to have experience designing things for 5, 10 years, maybe more. And then you understand how to design things well.
That's right.
But all the stuff you learned in college, that's just theory. That's just knowledge.
That's right. It's like Sully landing that airplane on the Hudson River. That didn't come from knowledge. That came from wisdom of having flown a lot of years. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Well said. Larry, tell us about your book.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that you have a book about your sailing adventures, right?
Oh, yeah, I do. And that one is called The Boy Behind the Gate. And there it is. Yeah, and it's available on Amazon and everywhere on hardcover, softcover, Kindle, and Audible. And I do the narrating. So if you don't mind listening to me for 12 hours, there you go. And then I have a new book that just came out. It's called Your Ideal Retirement Workbook. And it is based on the video program Sail into Retirement. And it's a step-by-step guide to retiring with purpose and fulfillment. And in there it's a guidebook, and it's lots of places to write down your answers. And it takes you through the 9 modules. Actually, in the book, there's 10 modules of going from, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, all the way through to here's your plan. And here's your first step to take in your plan. And it's good for people who have already retired. And by the way, I get a fair number of clients from people who have already been retired for a year or two. And they're like, is this it? Is this all there is? There's got to be something more. This is what I worked so hard for. And the book is also good for people who are before retirement. And you start answering these questions that I ask, like there's a passion quiz in there. And it's like asking, what were you doing the last time you felt good? And when was the last time you stayed up late? And, whatever. And it focuses you down into figuring out what is the vision that I want, that I see for my retirement. And then start planning for it now. Even people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, there's no reason why you can't at least start thinking about it. And certainly do a better job than I did of planning with respect to money.
Larry, thank you very much for joining us today. I'll put the links of those 2 books into the show notes. If somebody wants to reach out to you, are you active on social media, and what's the best way to reach you?
Absolutely. I'm on all the social medias. Don't ask me to name what they are, but no, but I'm on all of them. I have a YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and they can go to my website to learn a lot more. And that is LarryJacobson.com.
LarryJacobson.com. Sounds good. We'll put that into the show notes as well.
Yeah, SON. So just go to LarryJacobson.com. There's connections there to my other websites, including my training site, which is Buoy Training, and my new site, which is Own the Stage, where I teach people the best practices of being a public speaker.
Thanks very much, Larry. And thank you for all that you do. I think everyone deserves a happy and healthy retirement. And thank you for helping others achieve that goal.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors, and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.